Welcome to 40,000 years ago. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine something incredible. What if you woke up tomorrow morning but there were no alarm clocks? No phones buzzing on your nightstand, no school bus to catch, no tablets or computers waiting for you. Instead, you'd open your eyes to soft grey light coming through the entrance of a rock shelter, kind of like a big cave. The air would be cool and fresh, smelling like wood smoke and earth. You'd hear people nearby starting to wake up, talking quietly. A baby might cry for a moment, then stop. Someone laughs. Outside, birds are singing as the sun comes up. This is how people woke up every single day for hundreds of thousands of years. And today, we're going on an adventure to discover what a normal day was like for a kid just like you, living 40,000 years ago. First, let me tell you something amazing. The people living back then were exactly like us. They had the same kind of brain you have, the same body. They could think, feel, laugh and love, just like we do today. The only difference, their world was completely different from ours. You might have seen movies or cartoons showing cavemen as hairy, grunting people who spent all day running from scary animals and searching desperately for food. But guess what? That picture is almost completely wrong. Scientists who study ancient humans, they're called archaeologists and anthropologists, have discovered something surprising. Early humans weren't just barely surviving. They were actually living full, interesting lives. They had families and friends. They told jokes and stories. They made art and music. They played games. They took care of each other. They had time to relax and have fun. So let's start your day 40,000 years ago. You're sleeping on a bed made of dried grass and soft animal skins. You're lying close to other people in your group. Your mom, dad, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins and grandparents. Everyone sleeps near each other, not just because they love each other, but because sharing body heat keeps everyone warm on cold nights. The first thing you notice as you wake up is the cold morning air. It's not freezing. This isn't winter, but it's chilly enough that you don't want to leave your warm sleeping spot just yet. The second thing you notice is the smell. There's wood smoke. There's always wood smoke because the fire never completely goes out. Mixed with that is the smell of people, remember. No showers or soap back then. And maybe the scent of food from yesterday's meal. Someone is already awake. There's always someone awake. You see, people back then didn't sleep the same way we do now. They'd sleep for a few hours, then wake up in the middle of the night for a while, then sleep again. During those wakeful times, they'd talk quietly, check on the fire, or just think about things. This meant someone was usually awake to listen for danger, like a hungry animal getting too close to camp. Right now, that person is feeding the fire. You hear soft sounds of movement and see the flames grow brighter as they add more wood. Fire was super important. If it went out completely, starting it again was really hard and took a long time. So someone always made sure to keep it going. As the fire gets bigger, more people start waking up. Kids usually wake up first, just like today. You'd hear children's voices, the rustle of animal skins, a mother telling her child to stay close and stay warm. But here's something really different from your life today. There's no hurry. Nobody's late. There's no schedule to keep. The day is guided by the sun, by hunger, by the weather. There are hours before anyone needs to do anything particular, so people stretch slowly, working out the stiffness from sleeping on the ground. They yawn and scratch. If someone needs to use the bathroom, they just walk a little way from the sleeping area to a spot that's been chosen for that purpose. One of the older, more experienced people steps outside to check the surroundings. What changed during the night? Are there any animal tracks nearby that weren't there yesterday? What's the weather going to be like today? Is that cloud in the west bringing rain? This morning check is really important. Stone Age people were incredible at reading signs in nature, way better than most people today. They could tell from how birds were acting if a predator was nearby. They could predict weather by watching clouds and feeling the air. They could look at animal footprints and tell you what kind of animal it was, how big it was, how long ago it passed by, and whether it was healthy or hurt. As more people wake up and gather around the growing fire, quiet conversation begins. People might talk about their dreams. Back then, dreams were considered very important, maybe messages or warnings. Plans for the day start forming, but loosely. The group needs food, but that's always true. The question is, what kind of food and where to find it? Maybe someone noticed yesterday that berry bushes were getting ripe. Someone else might have seen signs of deer in a nearby valley. Another person might suggest checking the fishing spots if you're near water. Here's something really cool. Nobody's in charge like a boss or a king. Instead, people talk together and make decisions as a group. If someone's really good at something, like tracking animals or knowing which plants are safe to eat, others listen to them about that topic. But that's still ahead. Right now, in these early morning moments, the main thing happening is just being together. Your whole group, we call it a band, is gathering after the night. Everyone made it safely through another night. Everyone's here and okay. There's real comfort in that. The children are playing now. They're energy contagious. They're not playing anything with rules. No soccer or tag as we know it. Just running, chasing, wrestling. This physical play helps kids get strong and learn coordination. The adults watch with half their attention, letting kids be kids, but ready to step in if play gets too rough or if someone wanders too far from camp. Meanwhile, the grown-ups are checking things. Is that spear point still attached firmly to its wooden shaft? Did that basket get any holes in it? Is there enough rope for today? These aren't boring chores like we think of them. They're just part of life, as natural as breathing. And remember, all of this is happening without anyone feeling rushed or stressed about time. The sun is getting higher now. You've been awake maybe an hour, though nobody's counting. Your stomach is starting to tell you it's hungry, and other people are probably feeling the same way. Soon, everyone will turn their attention to food, but not yet. For now, you're warm, you're safe, and you're surrounded by people who care about you and will help you survive. This is what morning was like in the Stone Age. A slow, peaceful, communal way of waking up that followed the natural rhythms that humans lived by for hundreds of thousands of years. Let's talk about breakfast. Except your ancestors 40,000 years ago didn't really have breakfast the way you think about it. They didn't wake up at 7 in the morning, walk to the kitchen and pour themselves a bowl of cereal. They didn't have specific meal times at all. They ate when food was available, when they felt hungry, when the opportunity presented itself. This might sound messy, but it actually worked perfectly for their way of life. Picture yourself waking up in that rock shelter as the first light comes through the entrance. Your stomach growls. You're hungry, so you eat. It's as simple as that. What you're eating depends entirely on what's available right now. Maybe there's leftover meat from 2 days ago when some hunters brought down a deer. It's been hanging in the cool back part of the shelter, away from direct sunlight, wrapped in the deer's own hide. The cold air has kept it from going bad, though it's starting to smell a little strong. That means you should probably finish it today. You pull off a strip and chew it slowly. It's really tough and requires serious jaw work, but it's protein and fat and exactly what your body needs after sleeping all night. Your teeth are strong and your jaw muscles are powerful. Scientists who study ancient human skulls can see patterns on the teeth that show people spent their whole lives chewing tough foods. But here's what's really interesting. Those same teeth also show tiny plant particles, starch from roots and tubers, and bits from seeds and nuts. Your ancestors weren't just eating meat. They were eating everything they could find. Beside the meat, there's a wooden bowl, really just a piece of bark folded and sealed with sticky pine resin, filled with hazelnuts that were gathered 3 days ago. You crack a few between your back teeth using a technique that's been passed down through generations. Children watch adults do this from the time they're babies, learning the exact angle and pressure needed to crack the shell without crushing the nut inside. Next to the nuts, there's a leather pouch with dried berries, blackberries that were gathered during late summer and dried in the sun. They're wrinkled now, super sweet and concentrated, and you eat a handful. The sugar hits your system immediately, giving you quick energy. But the real treasure is a basket of roots sitting near the fire. Someone, probably one of the older women who knows everything about plants, dug these up yesterday from the riverbank. They're cattail roots, starchy and filling, but basically impossible to eat raw. So they've been placed near the fire, not right in it, just close enough that the heat is slowly breaking down the tough fibers and turning the starches into something your body can digest. This is cooking, but not like you know it today. No recipes, no exact temperatures, no timers. Just knowledge built up over thousands of generations about what heat does to different foods. The roots have been sitting there all night, slowly roasting in the warmth from the fire that never quite goes out. By morning, they're soft enough to eat and sweet enough to enjoy. You pull one out, careful not to burn your fingers. It's hot but manageable. You peel away the outer layer and bite into the flesh. It's not delicious by modern standards, but it's filling, and more importantly, it's safe. Raw, these roots contain chemicals that would give you a terrible stomachache. Cooked, they're perfectly fine to eat. This transformation, turning plants into food through fire, might be one of the most important discoveries in human history. It basically doubled or tripled the number of plant species your ancestors could eat. Roots that were poisonous raw became everyday foods when roasted. Seeds that would just pass through your digestive system became valuable nutrition when ground up and heated. The evidence for this incredible variety of foods comes from some pretty gross sources. Scientists have found fossilized poop at ancient human sites across Europe and Africa. When they look at these under microscopes, they find an amazing variety of plant remains. Seeds from dozens of different species, pollen from flowers, tiny fragments of leaves, roots, and bark. Some fossilized poop shows evidence of insects like grasshoppers, beetle larvae, and termites. These might seem gross to you, but they're actually excellent sources of protein and fat. There's also something called dental calculus, which is hardened plaque that builds up on teeth. When scientists scrape it off ancient human skulls and examine it under powerful microscopes, they find plant starches from all kinds of sources: wild grains, root vegetables, nuts, berries, even plant fibers that were probably chewed to get moisture out or to soften them for other uses. What comes together from all this evidence is a picture of incredible flexibility. Your ancestors weren't picky eaters specialized in just one or two things. They were opportunists capable of eating virtually any food source in their environment. Groups living near the ocean ate fish, shellfish, seaweed, seabirds, and sea mammals, along with whatever plants grew near the shore. Groups living in forests ate deer, wild boar, nuts, berries, roots, and mushrooms. Groups living near rivers ate fish, water birds, water plants, and the land animals that came to the river to drink. This flexibility was absolutely crucial for survival. Environments change, seasons shift, animal migrations follow unpredictable patterns. A group that could only eat one or two types of food would starve when those resources became scarce. But a group that could eat 50 different things would always find something to eat. As you're eating your morning meal, others are doing the same thing all around you. A young mother sharing nuts with her toddler, showing him how to crack them, how to pick out the meat without getting shell pieces. He's not very good at it yet. His small hands don't have the strength and coordination, but he's learning, and in a few years he'll be teaching his own younger siblings. An old woman is preparing something more complex. She's taken some of the leftover meat and is pounding it between two stones, mixing it with melted fat and dried berries. She's making something that can last a long time, concentrated nutrition that can be carried on long journeys or stored for when food is scarce. This is knowledge that's technical and precise. The amount of meat to fat to berries has to be exactly right or it will spoil. The pounding has to be thorough or it won't stick together. She learned this from her mother, who learned it from her mother. It's a chain of knowledge going back thousands of generations. Nobody's eating alone. That almost never happens. Food is social, shared out according to complex rules that everyone understands, without being told. The hunter who killed the deer yesterday isn't eating any more than anyone else. In fact, he might be eating less, because that's how the system works. Kill an animal, share it with the group, and when someone else makes a kill, they'll share with you. This is insurance, a way of pooling risk, the social glue that keeps the group together. Children run back and forth, stealing bites from different adults, getting playfully swatted away or having food pressed into their hands. Nobody's stingy with children. There's always enough to go around, and if there isn't, the adults eat less to make sure the young ones get fed. The meal isn't formal or ceremonial. People eat standing up, sitting down, walking around, checking tools, talking, laughing. But it serves really important social purposes anyway. Everyone's together, strengthening bonds, sharing information, making plans for the day. Who's going to gather plants today? Who's going hunting? Who's staying back to work on processing that deer hide? These decisions happen naturally, coming from agreement rather than someone giving orders. Someone mentions that the hazelnut trees by the northern grove should be producing well right now. Several women and older children volunteer to go check. Someone else notes that there were deer tracks near the river yesterday. The hunters exchange glances, nod, and start mentally preparing for a possible hunt. Food preparation continues throughout this conversation. Hands are always busy. Someone's grinding seeds between stones. Someone else is sorting through dried herbs, throwing away any that show signs of mold. A teenager is learning to use a sharp stone flake to slice thin strips of meat, preparing them for drying. These skills are absolutely crucial, and they're learned entirely through watching and practicing. No written recipes, no formal lessons. Children watch adults, try to copy them, get corrected gently, and try again. By the time they're adults themselves, they have encyclopedic knowledge about food. Which plants are safe to eat and when, how to identify them in different seasons, where to find them, how to process them, how to store them. This knowledge base is staggering. Studies of modern hunter-gatherer groups show that they typically know detailed information about 200 to 300 plant species. They know which parts are edible, which need special processing, which are medicinal, which are toxic, which are useful for other things like making rope or poison for arrow tips. Your ancestors almost certainly had similar knowledge. They had to. Their survival depended on it. Eat the wrong mushroom and you're dead. Fail to properly prepare certain routes and you're spending the next 3 days with terrible cramps. This isn't casual information. This is life and death knowledge, carefully preserved and passed down across generations. As the morning meal winds down, the fire is fed a few more sticks. The embers never go out entirely if someone's paying attention. Fire is too valuable, too difficult to make from scratch. Better to keep it alive, feeding it regularly, protecting it from rain and wind. Someone's always responsible for watching the fire, usually rotating through different people. The meal wasn't fancy, but it was enough. Everyone's eaten something. Bellies are reasonably full. energy levels are good enough for whatever the day will bring. And that's really all that matters. Your ancestors weren't fancy cooks, but they understood nutrition in a deep, instinctive way. They knew that variety mattered, that different foods provided different benefits, that balance over days and weeks was more important than perfection at every single meal. They were eating to live, but they were also living to eat. Food was pleasure, even when it was simple. The satisfaction of cracking a nut perfectly, the sweetness of ripe berries, the rich fattiness of bone marrow roasted over fire. These weren't just calories. They were experiences, shared moments, connections to the land and to each other. And now, with morning fully arrived and stomachs filled, it's time to get to work. But here's something nobody tells you about prehistoric life. The hunt gets all the glory in movies and museums. The dramatic encounters with mammoths, the coordinated takedowns of deer, the dangerous face-offs with predators. That's what captures our imagination. But here's the truth that would have been obvious to anyone actually living 40,000 years ago. Hunting was the exception. Gathering was the rule. On any given day, somewhere between 60 and 80% of your calories came from plants. Roots, tubers, nuts, seeds, berries, leaves, flowers. The percentage changed depending on the season and where you lived. Groups living near coastlines might have gotten more protein from shellfish. Communities in northern areas might have relied more heavily on meat during long winters. But for most human populations, most of the time, plants were what kept you alive. This wasn't because our ancestors were particularly fond of vegetables. It was simple math. A successful hunt might provide enough meat to feed your group for several days, but hunts failed more often than they succeeded. Animals are fast, unpredictable, and dangerous. They require hours of tracking, careful coordination, and a lot of luck. Plants, meanwhile, stay put. They're exactly where you left them last season, growing in predictable patterns that anyone with enough knowledge could learn to read. So while the hunters were out hoping for glory, the majority of your group was engaged in the real work of survival, walking the landscape with practiced eyes, reading signs invisible to untrained observers, collecting the foods that would actually end up in tonight's meal. Picture yourself on that gathering trip. It's mid-morning now. The sun has been up for a few hours, burning off the morning mist. You're heading out with 3 other people. Your mother's sister, who knows the plant locations better than anyone in your group. A younger cousin, maybe 11 years old, who's learning all this knowledge. And your own child, 3 years old, strapped to your back in a sling made from carefully softened deer hide. You're not just wandering randomly. You're following a mental map that's been built up over years of observation. The oak grove 3 miles north should have acorns ready for collection right now. The patch of wild onions near the creek will be past their best, but there's a stand of cattails just beyond it where you can dig up the starchy roots. If you're lucky, you might find a beehive with honey. If you're really lucky, bird eggs. The walk itself is no casual stroll. You're covering somewhere between 5 and 10 miles today, most of it over terrain that would challenge modern hikers. Rocky hillsides, thick underbrush, streams to cross, slopes to climb. You're doing all of this while carrying a child, plus the tools of your trade. A digging stick, fire hardened and worn smooth from use. Several baskets woven from plant fibres nested inside each other. A leather bag for small finds. Maybe a stone knife tucked into a belt made from twisted plant fibres. But here's what makes gathering so different from hunting. It's not about adrenaline or drama, it's about attention. You're reading the landscape like a book, noticing details that would be invisible to outsiders. The slight discoloration of soil that indicates wild tubers growing below. The pattern of animal tracks that suggests a fruit tree nearby. The specific angle of sunlight that tells you which side of the hill will have ripe berries. Your aunt stops at what looks like an unremarkable patch of ground, but she sees something you're still learning to recognize, a particular type of grass that always grows near edible roots. She drives her digging stick into the earth, probing carefully. 3 inches down, she strikes. Something solid. She works the stick around it, loosening the soil, then reaches in with her hands and pulls up a tuber the size of your fist. It's pale, knobby, completely unappetizing to look at, but you know from experience that when it's roasted in the coals of tonight's fire, it'll be sweet and filling. She hands the tuber to you. You place it carefully in your basket. She digs again, another tuber and another. This spot is rich. In 10 minutes you've collected enough tubers to feed everyone tonight, maybe with leftovers for tomorrow. But you're not done yet. Your aunt knows these plants by heart. More importantly, she knows their stories. The stories are how you remember the knowledge. She tells your young cousin about the time her grandmother got terribly sick from eating a root that looked almost exactly like this one but had slightly different leaves. She points out the distinction. 3 veins in the leaf instead of 5. That tiny difference means the other plant would kill you, shutting down your breathing within hours. This is education, but it's nothing like sitting in a classroom. It's survival knowledge passed down through stories, demonstrated with actual plants, reinforced through years of observation. Your cousin will learn hundreds of these lessons. By the time she's your age, she'll know perhaps 300 different plant species by sight, by season, by location. She'll know which ones are edible, which ones are medicinal, and which ones will kill. She'll know when to harvest each one, how to prepare it, and what it's useful for. Modern botanists spend years in university learning to identify plants. Your ancestors learned it by necessity, starting in early childhood, because getting it wrong could mean death. The group moves on. You wade through a shallow stream, the cold water shocking against your legs. On the far bank, your aunt spots something that makes her smile. Mushrooms growing in a fallen log. She approaches carefully, examines. From multiple angles, even smells them. Mushrooms are extremely tricky. Some are nutritious and delicious. Others cause violent illness. A few will kill you within days. She picks 3, leaves the rest. She's certain about these ones, but caution is always wise. Hours pass in this rhythm, walking, observing, collecting. The baby on your back has fallen asleep, lulled by the gentle motion. Your baskets are getting heavier. Wild grapes, still slightly tart but edible. Seeds from a grass that you'll grind into flour back at camp. Bark from a specific tree that when boiled makes a tea that reduces fever. Your aunt collects this last one carefully, never taking so much that she damages the tree. She learned long ago that you have to think about next season, next year, the generations coming after you. This is what we call sustainable harvesting today. Your ancestors didn't have a word for it. They just knew that if you stripped a plant bare, it wouldn't be there next time you needed it. The groups that learned this lesson survived, the ones that didn't face starvation when resources ran out. By early afternoon, you're miles from camp. Your legs are tired. Your shoulders ache from the weight of your baskets. But there's something almost peaceful about this work. No rush, no pressure, just the steady rhythm of walking and gathering, the warmth of the sun, the sound of birds calling to each other in the trees above. You're completely present in a way that modern humans rarely experience. Every sense is engaged. You're listening for the rustle of animals, watching for the shimmer of water that indicates a stream ahead, smelling the air for smoke that might mean another group is camping nearby. Your younger cousin asks a question. She spotted a plant with bright red berries and wants to know if they're safe to eat. Your aunt doesn't just answer yes or no. She walks over, examines the plant, and launches into another story. How her mother once found these berries during a harsh winter when other food was scarce. How they sustained the group through 3 days of blizzard. How you have to be careful because birds can eat them safely, but humans need to cook them first, otherwise they cause stomach cramps. The knowledge transfer continues. Every plant is a lesson. Every location is a memory. This landscape isn't just territory to your people, it's a library. Every tree, every stone, every stream carries information that's been accumulated over generations. Your ancestors didn't write anything down, but they were far from ignorant. They were repositories of sophisticated ecological knowledge that would impress any modern scientist. Finally, late in the afternoon, the group turns back toward camp. Your baskets are full now, heavy with food that will feed your entire group tonight. You've walked maybe 8 miles total. Your feet hurt, your back aches. The baby has woken up and is fussing, wanting to be fed, but you're satisfied. This is good work, important work, the kind of work that keeps everyone alive. When you get back to camp, there will be no fanfare. Nobody's going to celebrate your return the way they celebrate a successful hunt. But everyone knows the reality. The hunters might come back empty-handed tonight. They often do. But you brought food. Reliable, nutritious, life-sustaining food. And tomorrow you'll go out and do it again. This is the rhythm that sustained humanity for hundreds of thousands of years. Not the dramatic moments, but the steady, patient, knowledgeable work of gathering. Your ancestors were reading the landscape in ways we've almost completely forgotten. They were paying attention to nature with an intensity that most modern humans never experience. And they were doing it not as a hobby or a spiritual practice, but as the fundamental work of survival. Now, let's talk about what happens when the hunt actually does occur, because even though it's rare, it's still one of the most exciting parts of Stone Age. Life. Here's something that might surprise you. Your ancestor probably wasn't hunting today or yesterday, maybe not even this week. We have this image of prehistoric life as a constant struggle. Early humans waking up each morning and immediately heading out to chase down mammoths or wrestle with saber-toothed cats. But the reality was far more strategic. Hunting for early humans wasn't a daily activity. It was an occasional high-stakes event that required immense planning, patience, and more often than not, ended in failure. A successful hunt might happen every few days if you were lucky, every few weeks if you weren't. The rest of the time, you were preparing, planning, tracking, and most importantly, relying on gathering to fill your stomach. But when the hunt did happen, it was extraordinary. Let's say today is one of those days. The signs had been building for a while. Yesterday, scouts spotted fresh tracks from a small herd of antelope moving through a valley about 5 miles from camp. The animals are heading toward a seasonal water source, following patterns your people have observed for generations. The timing is right, the weather is clear, and most importantly, several experienced hunters are available and healthy enough to make the attempt. This is how it begins, not with sudden impulse, but with careful planning. The group gathers in the early morning, 6 men and 2 women, all proven trackers and hunters. They discuss the plan using a combination of spoken language and hand signals that have been refined over thousands of years. Who will take which position? Where are the animals likely to go? What are the backup options if things don't work out? They carry spears, each one a masterpiece of prehistoric engineering that took days to create. The wooden shaft was carefully straightened over fire and seasoned for months to prevent warping. The stone point was shaped from high-quality flint, possibly traded from a quarry 200 miles away. It's attached with plant resin and sinew that's been processed and dried to create a bond stronger than most modern glues. Some of the hunters also carry atlatls, spear throwers that use leverage to triple the velocity and distance of a thrown spear. This technology is relatively new, maybe only a few thousand years old in your region, but it's revolutionizing hunting. The group moves out, and immediately you notice something. They're not rushing. There's no frantic chase, no dramatic sprint across the plain. Instead, they're walking at a steady, sustainable pace, reading the landscape as they go. This is where hunting becomes a science. One of the trackers kneels beside a depression in the sandy soil. He studies it for several long moments, then signals to the others. The track is fresh, probably from this morning. The depth and clarity tell him the animal was moving at a walk, not alarmed. The spacing between tracks indicates it's a young adult, healthy, good size, but not too large to bring down. He can tell all this from a single hoof print. This isn't magic. It's pattern recognition honed over a lifetime of observation. Your people have been tracking animals since childhood, learning to read the landscape the way you might read a book. Every broken twig, every disturbed pebble, every scratch on a rock face tells part of the story. Where the animals went, how fast they were moving, how long ago they passed, whether they were calm or frightened. The group follows the trail for hours. No rushing, just steady walking, periodically stopping to check signs and adjust their strategy. This is the part of hunting that never makes it into the dramatic retellings. The long, patient stalking that requires more mental endurance than physical strength. Around midday, they spot the herd, 8 antelope grazing in a shallow valley near a waterhole. Now comes the critical decision point. Do they attempt an ambush trying to get close enough for spear range, or do they use the technique that humans, uniquely among all predators, have perfected? They choose persistence hunting. Here's what makes humans terrifying predators. We can't outrun almost any animal in a sprint. A healthy antelope can hit 50 miles per hour. A human tops out around 15. But we have something no other animal has. We can run for hours in the heat of the day without overheating. Thanks to our nearly hairless bodies and incredible capacity for sweating, we're built for endurance. Most animals covered in fur and lacking efficient cooling systems have to stop and rest after intense exertion, or they'll literally cook from the inside. The hunters spread out and begin to jog toward the herd. Not a sprint, just a steady, sustainable trot. The antelopes spot them immediately and bolt. They're gone in seconds, disappearing over a ridge. But the humans don't stop. They follow the tracks at that same steady pace, reading the signs, keeping up the pressure. An hour passes, 2 hours. The sun is brutal now, the kind of heat that would drop most predators in their tracks. But the humans keep moving. Their bodies are designed for exactly this kind of endurance. They're sweating heavily, yes, but that's the point. Each drop of moisture evaporating from their skin is carrying away heat that would otherwise build up and shut down their muscles. They find the herd again. The antelope run, but they're showing signs of stress now. Their tongues are hanging out, they're panting heavily. They can't cool down fast enough. The chase continues. 3 hours, 4 hours. The trackers are rotating the lead position, allowing individuals to drop back and recover slightly while others maintain the pressure. This is cooperative hunting at its finest. No single human could do this alone. But a coordinated group, communicating constantly, sharing the effort, can accomplish what seems impossible. Finally, after nearly 5 hours, they close in on a single antelope that has separated from the herd. The animal is stumbling now, its cooling system overwhelmed, its muscles beginning to fail from the combination of heat and exhaustion. One hunter moves in close enough for a spear throw. The weapon flies true, striking behind the shoulder, and moments later, it's over. The hunters stand around the fallen animal, not cheering or celebrating yet. First comes the practical work. One of them makes a quick, precise cut and offers a prayer or acknowledgement. We can't know the exact words or gestures, but evidence from multiple prehistoric sites suggests early humans performed some kind of ritual around successful kills. Respect for the animal that gave its life, gratitude to whatever spirits or forces they believed governed the hunt. Then comes the butchering, which is itself a sophisticated technical operation. These hunters know animal anatomy better than most modern surgeons know human anatomy. Every muscle group, every organ, every useful piece. They work quickly and efficiently. The hide comes off in one piece, valuable for clothing and shelter. The choicest cuts of meat are separated for immediate consumption and for carrying back to camp. Organs that spoil quickly are prepared for eating on site. Nothing is wasted. Even the bones will eventually be cracked open for their marrow, one of the most nutrient-dense foods available. But here's the problem. They're 5 miles from camp, and they've just produced several hundred pounds of meat and materials. They can't carry it all in one trip, and leaving meat unattended means lions, hyenas, and vultures will claim it within hours. This is where the social dimension of hunting becomes crucial. 2 runners head back to camp at speed to bring reinforcements. The rest stay with the kill, building a fire to keep scavengers at bay and beginning the process of smoking some of the meat for preservation. Within a few hours, more people arrive from camp. Elders, children old enough to help carry, nursing mothers who left their infants with relatives. Everyone participates in the harvest. The trip back to camp is a celebration. Successful hunts are rare enough that they're social events. There will be feasting tonight, stories told around the fire, probably dancing and music. The hunters will recount the chase in detail, and in the telling, it will become part of the community's collective memory. Another story to teach young people about strategy, persistence, and cooperation. But let's be clear about something. This doesn't happen every day or even every week. Between successful hunts, there are dozens of failed attempts, tracks that lead nowhere, animals that prove too fast or too alert, injuries that force the hunters to turn back, hunts that simply don't work out despite everyone doing everything right. And this is crucial to understanding prehistoric life. Hunting was important, absolutely. It provided concentrated protein and fat that gathering alone couldn't match. The social bonds formed during cooperative hunts helped cement group unity. The skills required, tracking, weapon crafting, strategic planning, pushed the development of human intelligence and communication. But hunting was never the main source of calories for most prehistoric groups. That honor went to gathering, which happened every day, provided the majority of nutrition and didn't require risking life and limb. Hunting was the occasional glory, the high-stakes gamble that sometimes paid off spectacularly. What made early humans successful wasn't that they were the best hunters, it's that they were good enough at hunting while also being excellent at everything else. Gathering, tool-making, social cooperation, adapting to new environments. They were generalists who could deploy specialist skills when needed. Now let's move to another crucial part of Stone Age life, the making of tools. By midday, the camp is alive with a sound that would have been instantly recognizable to any craftsperson throughout history. The rhythmic tap-tap-tap of stone on stone, not loud, not violent, just persistent, purposeful. The sound of someone making something that didn't exist before. Your aunt is sitting on a flat rock near the central fire, a hammerstone in one hand and a piece of flint in the other. Every few seconds, she strikes the flint at precisely the right angle, sending a small flake spinning off into the dust. Around her, a scatter of rejected pieces and failed attempts. This debris would still be visible 40,000 years later, telling stories to people who learned to read stone. This isn't occasional work. This is daily maintenance, as essential as eating or sleeping, because tools don't last forever. That spear point used yesterday might have chipped when it hit bone. The scraper someone used to process that hide last week. Its edge is dull now, almost useless. In a world without metal, without factories, without the ability to simply buy replacements, you made your tools or you didn't survive. But here's what's remarkable. Stone tool making, what archaeologists call knapping, wasn't something you just figured out one afternoon. It was a skill that took years to master, requiring an understanding of stone properties that bordered on intimate knowledge. Different. Rocks fractured in different ways. Flint was predictable. Obsidian was sharp but fragile. Chert was reliable but harder to work. You had to know where to find good stone, how to test it, how to recognize quality before you invested hours of work. Watch your aunt working and you'd see expertise that took a lifetime to acquire. She isn't just hitting rocks together randomly. She's reading the stone, seeing lines of potential fracture invisible to untrained eyes. Each strike is calculated. Too hard and the piece would shatter. Too soft and nothing would happen. The angle has to be exact. The point of impact precisely chosen. It's geometry and physics executed entirely through intuition and muscle memory. The process is called the prepared core technique, and it represents centuries of accumulated knowledge. Your aunt has shaped this piece of flint over the past hour, carefully removing flakes to create a core with just the right shape and angle. Now she's ready for the payoff. One perfect strike, and a long, thin blade detaches from the core, sharp enough to slice through hide or meat with minimal pressure. She examines it critically, running her thumb along the edge, then nods. Good enough. But she isn't done. The blade needs hafting, attachment to a handle that will make it actually useful. This is where craft becomes art. She's prepared a wooden handle earlier, a piece of hardwood with a slot carved into one end. Now she pulls out a small leather pouch containing pine resin she'd collected and heated until it became sticky, mixed with a bit of charcoal and crushed bone for strength. This becomes the prehistoric equivalent of superglue. Watching her work, you'd notice something fascinating. She doesn't need to think about most of the steps. Her hands move automatically through processes she's performed thousands of times. Heat the resin over the fire, apply it to the handle slot, position the blade precisely, wrap the joint with thin strips of sinew that will shrink and tighten as they dry. The entire process takes maybe 10 minutes, but it draws on decades of experience and generations of accumulated knowledge. Near her, your brother is working on a different problem entirely. He has a piece of antler from that deer killed 3 days ago, and he's slowly, patiently carving it into a spear point. This is different from stonework. Antler is organic, flexible, capable of taking impacts that would shatter stone. But it's also harder to shape, requiring different tools and different techniques. He's using a stone burin, a chisel-like tool, to scrape and carve the antler. The work is tedious, producing a constant, soft scraping sound. Thin curls of antler fall away with each stroke, accumulating in a small pile at his feet. Every so often, he stops and tests the point against his thumb, checking for sharpness and balance. This point will be different from the stone-tipped spears most hunters use. Lighter, more flexible, it can be thrown farther and is less likely to break on impact. But it takes hours to make. An antler is only available when someone successfully hunts deer or similar animals. Stone is everywhere. Antler is precious. So you use it carefully for special purposes, and you make sure everyone in the group knows who made what. Because here's something the archaeological record has only recently revealed. Prehistoric craftspeople took pride in their work. We know this because we find tools that are more beautiful than they needed to be. Stone points shaped with perfect symmetry, even though asymmetrical points would work just as well. Bone needles decorated with tiny carved patterns, antler spear throwers carved into the shapes of animals. Nobody decorates something purely functional unless they care about aesthetics, unless they want their work to be recognizable, admired. Your brother's spear point will be efficient, yes, but it will also be beautiful because when you carry it, when you use it to feed your family, you want everyone to know who made it. Status, reputation, identity, all conveyed through craftsmanship. Across the camp, 3 women are working on an equally essential task, clothing production. One is scraping a deer hide stretched across a wooden frame, using a stone scraper to remove every trace of fat and membrane from the inner surface. The sound is distinctive, a rhythmic scraping that carries across the camp. Her hands move in steady strokes, overlapping each path slightly to ensure complete coverage. This isn't quick work. A single hide might require hours of scraping, and even then, you're not done. The hide has to be treated, either by smoking it over a fire or by rubbing it with a mixture of brain tissue and fat that prevents it from becoming stiff when it dried. The brain tanning process is chemistry without labs, developed through centuries of trial and error. Someone, somehow, had figured out that brains contained exactly the right compounds to preserve leather. Maybe they discovered it by accident, maybe through systematic experimentation. Either way, the knowledge has been passed down parent to child for generations. Nearby, her sister is working on a hide that's already been tanned. She has a bone awl, a pointed tool for punching holes, and she's slowly, methodically creating a garment. Punch a hole, thread sinew through it, punch another hole. The stitching is crude by modern standards, but remarkably effective. These clothes will be warm, durable, and flexible. They'll last for seasons, maybe years, protecting their wearers from cold that could kill in hours. The third woman is doing something that would have seemed impossible to earlier humans. She's sewing with an actual needle, a tiny piece of bone drilled with a hole at one end, threaded with sinew. This technology is less than 20,000 years old in your time, a recent innovation that has revolutionized clothing production. With needles, you can make clothes that actually fit, that can be tailored to individual bodies, that can be decorated with sewn-on beads or dyed leather strips. She's making winter clothing for her daughter, fur-lined and layered, warm enough for the brutal cold that will come in a few months. The little girl sits nearby, watching intently, occasionally trying to help. This is how knowledge transfers, not through formal instruction, but through constant observation and imitation. By the time the girl is 10, she'll be competent at basic hide work. By 20, she might be one of the most skilled leather workers in the group. But clothing and tools aren't the only things being made. An older man sits by himself working on something smaller, more delicate. He has a collection of shells he traded for last summer when a neighbouring group had visited from the coast, 3 weeks' walk away. Now he's drilling tiny holes in them with a stone drill, a painstaking process that requires steady hands and infinite patience. These will become beads, strung on plant fibre cord to make necklaces or bracelets. Purely decorative, purely social. Nobody needs jewellery to survive. But humans have been making it for at least 100,000 years, probably longer, because survival isn't enough. We need beauty, status markers, ways to express identity and belonging. Those beads say, I have connections to the coast, I have time to make beautiful things, and I value aesthetics. All of that conveyed through pierced shells on a string. What's striking about all this activity is the specialization. Not everyone is good at everything. Your aunt has spent decades mastering stonework and is genuinely expert at it. Your brother excels at antler and bone carving, but is merely adequate at napping. The woman making winter clothing is the best leather worker in the group, and when her skills are needed, others contribute food or help with other tasks in exchange. This isn't quite a market economy, but it's close, a recognition that different people have different talents, and that the group benefits when people specialize. It's also the foundation for something that becomes increasingly important: social complexity. In groups where everyone can do everything equally well, there isn't much basis for hierarchy or status differences. But when individuals develop specialized skills that others need, power dynamics shift. The best tool maker, the best leather worker, the best artist, they all gain influence that goes beyond simple physical strength or hunting ability. And everywhere children watch. A boy of maybe 8 sits near your aunt trying to copy her movements with his own small stones. Most of his attempts fail, producing nothing useful, but she encourages him anyway. Occasionally she takes his hand, guides his strikes, shows him the right angle. This is education, prehistoric style. No schools, no formal curriculum, just constant observation and practice under the guidance of experts. By the time the boy is 15, he might be competent at basic tool making. By 25, if he has talent and dedication, he might be expert enough to teach others, and the knowledge will flow forward another generation, each one adding small refinements, tiny improvements that will accumulate over centuries into technological revolutions. The afternoon sun moves across the sky, and the sounds of craft continue. Tapping, scraping, the crackle of fire, occasional conversation, creating the material culture that makes human life possible, building one patient stroke at a time, the foundation for everything that will come after. Now, if you imagine early humans as exhausted, half-starved figures trudging endlessly across the landscape, constantly hunting, constantly gathering, constantly on the brink of collapse, you're not alone. That image has been drilled into us for decades. Life before civilization, we're told, was nasty, brutish, and short, a constant struggle for survival with no time for anything except work. But when? Scientists started studying modern hunter-gatherer societies and actually counting how they spent their time. A very different picture emerged. On average, adults in many foraging societies only spend about 4 to 6 hours a day on what we would call work. Finding food, preparing it, maintaining tools, basic camp upkeep. The rest of the day isn't filled with frantic scrambling, it's filled with nothing in particular. Resting, talking, playing, making music, grooming, staring into the distance, simply existing. If your day 40,000 years ago were written down on a modern timesheet, it would probably confuse any boss today. Yes, there are bursts of intense effort. Tracking animals for hours, carrying heavy loads of gathered food back to camp, shaping stone tools with careful precision. But these bursts are surrounded by long stretches of low-intensity, flexible time. Time you can bend around your body's energy, the weather, the mood of the group. So what did people actually do with all those hours? A lot of it would look surprisingly familiar and strangely slow. You rest. That might mean lying on your side under a patch of shade, half listening to the chatter of your relatives. It might mean sitting near the fire, absently turning a smooth pebble in your fingers, watching the smoke drift upward in twisting ribbons. When the body is your only real tool, preserving it is part of survival. Resting isn't laziness, it's maintenance. You socialize. Conversation in a small band of 20 or 30 people isn't optional background noise. It's the web that holds the group together. Every talk about who saw which herd of animals, who found a new stand of tubers, who argued with whom last night, these aren't just idle gossip. They're information-sharing systems, conflict management strategies, emotional support. You play with children. You let them climb over you like a living jungle gym. You show them how to throw little sticks at a target, or how to gently handle a piece of stone without cutting themselves. Their games might look like chaos, but through them they're rehearsing for adulthood, practicing coordination, testing social boundaries, experimenting with risk and trust. For long stretches of the day there is no urgent agenda, no tight schedule, no alarm clock dragging you from one task to the next. The pace of life is dictated by the slow cycles of the sun, the seasons and the movements of animals, not by the minute hand on a clock. And then, somewhere in all that unscheduled time, something else begins to happen. Humans start to invent fun. Archaeologists have found small objects at prehistoric sites that don't fit neatly into any category of tool or weapon. Tiny carved animals made of bone or antler, smooth-shaped pieces of stone drilled through the center like early spinning tops, little figurines of people, sometimes exaggerated in strange ways. To a hungry adult crouching over a fire, these might not do much. But to a child, they're toys. You can picture it. A small hand trying to spin a stone disc on the packed earth. Two kids pretending to hunt with miniature spears made from twigs. A parent, half amused, half attentive, letting them help with a task that doesn't really need helping. Play isn't a distraction from real life. It is real life. Through play, children learn to aim, to negotiate, to share, to lead and follow. There are hints of games for adults too. Certain small stones and bones, found together in patterns that suggest dice or counters. Etched lines on flat rock surfaces that might have been game boards. Places where pieces were moved back and forth in quiet competitions that passed the time and strengthened social bonds. We don't know the rules they used or what they played for, but the impulse is clear. When immediate needs are met, human minds look for patterns, challenges, little puzzles to solve. Games are structured daydreams, and early humans seem to have had time for plenty of them. And then, there's music. In caves in Europe, archaeologists have discovered delicate flutes carved from bird bones and mammoth ivory, some of them more than 40,000 years old. They're not crude noisemakers. Some have carefully spaced holes that produce recognizable musical scales. Someone sat down and experimented, adjusting each hole just a bit, learning by ear how to turn raw bone into a working instrument. Imagine the first time someone in your band brings one of those flutes out by the fire. The sky is dark, the stars are beginning to appear, embers are glowing. They lift the flute to their lips, take a breath, and a strange, clear sound rises above the crackle of the fire and the soft murmur of voices. For a moment, everyone freezes. Then the notes repeat, hesitant at first, then more confident. Someone starts to clap a rhythm. Another person taps a stick against a log. Feet begin to move. Bodies sway. The camp, which just a few minutes ago was quietly settling in for the night, is suddenly alive with dance. Music and dance are more than entertainment. They synchronize bodies and minds. When everyone moves together, breathes together, when voices rise and fall together, something powerful happens in the brain. Group identity strengthens. Anxiety fades. The world feels for a moment coherent and safe. In small, vulnerable bands of early humans, those moments of shared rhythm may have been as important as any spear or shelter. After the dancing comes the other great technology of leisure, stories. You're back at the fire. The night is quiet now. A few last sparks drift upward like tiny glowing insects. The older members of the group edge closer to the flames. Children lean against their parents. Someone, maybe the best talker in the band, begins a story. It might be about the last great hunt when the wind changed suddenly and nearly ruined everything. It might be about the time the river flooded and the group had to move camp in a hurry. It might be about a trickster animal who steals fire, or a spirit who lives in the thunderclouds and punishes the greedy. Some of these stories are clearly about real events. Others reach into the world of myth and imagination, but all of them carry something, a warning, a clever strategy, a memory of who did what and why it mattered. Without writing, without records, stories are the memory of the group. They carry information across years and generations, where the good water is in a dry season, which plants can cure a fever and which can kill you. What happened the last time someone broke a particular social rule. Listening to these tales by firelight, half awake, half drifting, you're not just being entertained. You're being trained, quietly and gently, for the rest of your life. But not all of this time is spent in conversation, music, or play. Some of it is devoted to the slow, meticulous work of grooming. If you've ever watched monkeys or apes in a nature documentary, you've seen it. They carefully part each other's fur, picking out dirt and parasites, inspecting skin with absolute concentration. It looks fussy, but it serves two purposes: hygiene and bonding. Early humans did the same, but with a slightly different twist. No fur, but plenty of hair. You sit with your back to a friend or sibling or partner while they gently comb through your scalp with fingers, or a simple comb made from bone or wood. They pick at little bumps, remove bits of debris, crush an unlucky louse between their nails. It's both practical and soothing, the kind of intimate contact that says without words, "You matter, I'm paying attention to you." Then comes decoration. Red ochre, a naturally occurring iron-rich pigment, shows up at human sites going back hundreds of thousands of years. It's often ground into powder, mixed with fat or water, and applied to skin or hair. Is it sunscreen, insect repellent, symbolic body paint? It might be all three at once. You sit while someone traces lines on your face, your chest, your arms. Maybe they mark you as a member of a particular band. Maybe they signal your role in a ritual or your status as someone who has completed a dangerous hunt. Hair is braided. Simple jewelry made from shells, teeth, or carved bone is threaded through hair or hung from cords around wrists and necks. These acts take time. They're not required to eat, drink, or stay alive, but they're part of how early humans turned bare survival into a life with identity, beauty, and meaning. And in between all this talking and playing and decorating and music making, there are long stretches of something that in the modern world we've almost forgotten how to do, just watching. You lie on your back and look at the clouds drifting across the sky. You sit quietly and follow the path of a line of ants carrying food back to their nest. You stand at the edge of camp and watch a herd of animals grazing in the distance, the way they cluster and scatter, how the wind shifts their scent. You trace the patterns of stars, noticing how some constellations rise at particular times of year, how the moon waxes and wanes. To a modern observer, this might look like boredom. But for early humans, this constant, gentle observing is part of how they build a mental map of the world. It trains attention, it sharpens intuition. The person who has spent hundreds of evenings quietly watching the sky might be the first to notice an unusual pattern of clouds that hints at an approaching storm. The child who has spent endless hours following animal tracks just for fun might become the best tracker in the band without ever being formally taught. And there's something else here, something less practical and more mysterious. When you have no glowing screens, no written words, no background music piped in from distant speakers, silence and stillness don't feel empty. They feel full of insect hum and bird calls, the sigh of wind through grass, the distant rush of water, the soft breathing of people you love nearby. In that stillness, the boundary between you and the world can feel thinner. You're not a separate mind trapped in a frantic schedule, glancing at nature through a window on your day off. You're an animal in an environment, embedded in it, attentive to it, shaped by it. So the day of an early human 40,000 years ago is not a blur of endless work. It's a pattern of effort and ease, of focused work and rambling leisure, hunting, gathering, crafting, yes, but also joking, singing, dancing, grooming, decorating, storytelling, cloud watching, stargazing. Their lives were dangerous in ways ours usually aren't. Illness, injury, and hunger were always nearby, but they also had something that's become rare in many modern lives. Long, unbroken stretches of time in which nothing urgent had to be done. Time to let the mind wander, time to be with others without an agenda, time to simply be awake in a living world. And as the fire dies down and the last story fades into the warmth of the night, that spaciousness follows you into sleep. The painted animals wait in dark caves underground. The beads rest against sleeping skin. Above, the stars turn slowly, whether anyone watches or not. Tomorrow there will be work again, but there will also be music and laughter, and the slow, quiet business of being human. This is what life was like 40,000 years ago. Not perfect, not easy, but undeniably beautifully human.